The number one issue facing America, according to voters under 30, climate change. Number 2, healthcare. Then comes jobs in the economy, civil rights, education, guns, civil liberties, and only then comes government spending. Why is it that young people who are so concerned about the future of our environment seem so much less worried about the future of our nation's finances? And conversely, if voters under 30 aren't all that concerned about the debt that they'll one day inherit, why are boomer politicians threatening to shut down an entire government over it? 3 explanations. The first is that many young voters see spending on social programs not as debt, but as investment. Their view is that they'll save money in the long term by expanding public health care, family safety nets, and climate reforms.
Costs increase over time, and if we don't invest in items like healthcare, for example, now, we end up with a population that's sicker later. If we don't invest in higher ed now, we have an ill-equipped workforce later.
Kristen McGuire is the executive director of Young Invincibles, a nonprofit that advocates for the economic advancement of young adults. They're nonpartisan, but yeah, they really like what President Biden's priorities would mean for younger generations.
Not investing in this critical moment could cost us in the long run. We have to think about our long-term economic security goals for our country, which is so much more than just a number.
The second explanation for the seemingly upside-down generational concerns when it comes to national debt: identity politics. Younger voters are just less likely to identify as Republican, the party that has traditionally been about smaller government and less debt. And even though the Trump administration grew that debt by more than $8 trillion, sociologists say that limited spending is just still more baked into the DNA of older, more conservative voters than their younger counterparts.
When you look at Gen X, for example, those were the Reagan years. And so Gen X has a tendency to be a little bit more conservative than millennials, especially who came of age during the Obama years.
Abby Kisa from Tufts University says that also factors into the third explanation for young voters' disinterest on debt. A lot of them don't feel a connection to either political party. So young conservatives, and there are plenty of them, just don't share the same priorities as older Republicans.
57% of youth who voted for former President Trump said that they are somewhat or very concerned about climate change. Roughly the same amount, 59%, strongly or somewhat favor investing in green energy.
She says the disconnect on debt isn't surprising from the data she's reviewed.
Young people who identify as Republican are less likely to be contacted by the Republican Party or Republican campaigns.
So that explains the why. But how about one reason why young voters should maybe care a little more about the national debt?
This isn't fake money that is just, printed from nowhere and then grows on trees, right? We're talking about, actual money that you're gonna have to pay back at some point in the future.
Joe Mitchell's a 24-year-old state rep in Iowa who recently launched Run Gen Z, an organization dedicated to getting more young conservatives to run for office.
The most underrepresented demographic in Congress is Generation Z.
He also wants to help educate younger voters who, according to recent surveys, are more likely than older voters to say they don't really understand our debt limits. Mitchell says it's to their detriment.
We can throw a bunch of money at, healthcare programs and Green New Deal programs right now, but unless we have the money to maintain those programs into the future, they're not going to work.
Most economists agree that some debt is okay. After all, what could be more American than taking out a home loan you won't pay off for at least 30 years? But there's great disagreement as to how much is too much. Younger generations have made it clear they want access to similar safety nets that older generations already enjoy, and assurances that the country will be just as strong as it is now when they're older. The biggest question that remains: will they use their power of the vote to achieve it? Hey everyone, Noah Pransky here. Thanks for checking out the NBCLX YouTube channel. For more videos, click here. And don't forget to click subscribe to join the NBCLX community.